This man knew, and he still held. He still made them drag him out of the race by his hush puppies. Hi, welcome to all of our new subscribers and members here on the channel. My name is Reese Waters, and I'm troubled. Go ahead, run the clip.
President Biden is addressing the election. Let's listen.
Thank you. Good to see this cabinet and the staff together here. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
What's the applause for? Just for appearing in public? Is it for staying away through the whole campaign? Because that was not a successful strategy. Is this how we always start these things? So I'm normally late.
Please. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's good to see you all. Particularly good to see my granddaughter sitting in the front row here. Hi, Finn, how are you, honey? For over 200 years, America has carried on the greatest experiment in self-government in the history of the world. That's not hyperbole, that's a fact. We're the people. The people vote and choose their own leaders, and they do it peacefully.
Let's see, for over 200 years, okay, gotcha. So that wouldn't take us through 2020. Okay, yeah, that checks. Okay, that checks.
And we're in a democracy. The will of the people always prevails.
Are you sure? Are you sure about that, Joe Biden? Because not only are the lion's share of potential policies, planned moves that the upcoming administration intends to make unpopular with the American people, which is the reason why they hid them throughout the entire campaign, I'm not entirely done with some of these votes.
I'm still not at peace with the election results, and here's why. If we had record turnout, if we had so many new registrations for new voters, the numbers literally don't add up. And what I was thinking just now is, so when we see how powerful a Black woman is, that in, did she have 3 months, maybe a little over 3 months, she could bring the country together, what is a fantastic way to destabilize that shit? You know that a lot of Democrats are going to say, hey, that's what happened, we're just going to accept it. No, y'all, we need to fight because something is not right here.
Yesterday, I spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory. And I assured him I would direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. That's what the American people deserve. Yesterday, I also spoke with Vice President Harris. She's been a partner and a public servant. She ran an inspiring campaign, and everyone got to see something that I learned early on to respect so much, her character. She has a backbone like a ramrod. She has great character, true character. She gave her whole heart and effort, and she and her entire team should be proud of the campaign they ran.
So if I got this straight, Joe Biden, you are taking all of the powers that have been vested in you by a Supreme Court looking to protect a potential Trump presidency and leave him invulnerable to any kind of legal or legislative restriction. You're going to take all of those vested powers on vacation? Like, is that what you plan to do? All the questions we have about this vacation, you just got it. Okay. No, because all of this has worked out so well so far. Them taking it to hell and the Democrats trying to play by your imaginary rule book. That has gone amazing.
The struggle for the soul of America since our very founding has always been an ongoing debate and still vital today. I know for some people, it's a time for victory, to state the obvious. For others, it's a time of loss. Campaigns are contests of competing visions. The country chooses one or the other. We accept the choice the country made.
Who's we? Who's we? Huh? I didn't know who we is because I don't know that I'm in we, and I definitely know that they're not in we. Up until a week ago, they was still talking about 2020, so ain't no whole lot of we.
I've said many times, you can't love your country only when you win. You can't love your neighbor only when you agree. Something I hope we can do, no matter who you voted for, is see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans. Bring down the temperature. I also hope we can lay to rest the question about the integrity of the American electoral system. It is honest, it is fair, and it is transparent. And it can be trusted, win or lose. I also hope we can restore the respect for all our election workers who busted their necks and took risks at the outset. We should thank them. Thank them for staffing voting sites, counting the votes, protecting the very integrity of the election. Many of them are volunteers who do it simply out of love for their country. And as they did their duty as citizens, I will do my duty as president. I'll fulfill my oath, and I will honor the Constitution. On January 20th, we'll have a peaceful transfer of power here in America.
Here's the issue I take with that. For there to be a transfer of power, okay, you are transferring your power to the Republicans. For there to be a transfer of power, you have to have the power, okay? You can't transfer the power if you don't have the power. That means you have the power. Feel me? You have the power.
To all our incredible staff, supporters, cabinet members, all the people who've been hanging out with me for the last 4 years, God love you, as my mother would say. Thank you so much. You put so much into the past 4 years. I know it's a difficult time. You're hurting. I hear you and I see you. But don't forget all that we accomplished. It's been a historic presidency. Not because I'm president, because what we've done, what you've done. A presidency for all Americans. Much of the work we've done is already being felt by the American people, but the vast majority of it will not be felt over the next 10 years.
Well, see, that's a problem. That is a problem because I happen to agree with you that some historic things were done during your presidency, but they're not feeling it in time for them to reward you or any of the people in power for your accomplishments. That was a huge part of the problem with Kamala Harris trying to campaign in the face of people attacking her on an economy that is the envy of the world. They need to be able to feel it within 10 years. That's the thing, Joe. And also, and we'll probably circle back around to this later, if you had the ability to explain exactly what your accomplishments were and to show your work, we might not be here.
We have legislation we passed that's just only now just really kicking in. We're going to see over $1 trillion worth of infrastructure work done, changing people's lives in rural communities and communities that are in real difficulty because it takes time to get it done. And so much more. It's going to take time, but it's there. The road ahead is clear, assuming we sustain it. There's so much we can get done and will get done based on the way the legislation was passed. And it's truly historic. You know, we're leaving behind the strongest economy in the world. I know people are still hurting, but things are changing rapidly. Together, we've changed America for the better. Now we have 74 days to finish the term. our turn. Let's make every day count. That's the responsibility we have to the American people. Look, folks, you all know it in your lives. Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. We all get knocked down. But the measure of our character, as my dad would say, is how quickly we get back up. Remember, a defeat does not mean we are defeated. We lost this battle. The America of your dreams is calling for you to get back up. That's the story of America for over 240 years and counting. It's a story for all of us, not just some of us. The American experiment endures. We're going to be okay, but we need to stay engaged. We need to keep going. And above all, we need to keep the faith. I'm so proud to have worked with all of you. I really mean it. I sincerely mean it. God bless you all. God bless America. And may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Now, Joe, your point about setbacks being unavoidable and getting back up, I take to heart. However, that whole thing about us being okay, I mean, if I was 80 plus and looking at a shortened runway than I am right now at 40 plus, and if I was 80 plus and a white man with a secure retirement, I probably feel like I'll be okay. Got other concerns. Yeah, I got other concerns. So I don't know if your will be okay. I can interpret as my will be okay. It's going to be a little bit longer road that I got to be concerned with. As far as the next 70 some odd days until inauguration, yeah, we taking it one day at a time. We definitely taking it one day at a time. But, Oh, we got a rebuttal?
One of the most powerful figures in the Democratic Party is putting the blame for Tuesday's historic loss on President Biden. This is in an interview with the New York Times. Listen to Pelosi.
Had the president gotten out sooner, there may have been other candidates in the race. The anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, that there would be an open primary. And as I say, Kamala may have, I think she would have done well in that and been stronger going forward. But we don't know that. That didn't happen. We live with what happened. And because the president endorsed Kamala Harris immediately, that really made it almost impossible to have a primary at that time. If it had been much earlier, it would have been different.
Wait a minute. Was that Nancy Pelosi saying somebody should have left sooner because of age considerations? Is that what we have another rebuttal?
I'm sure he thinks probably something close to what I think, which is that she's wrong. I don't often think that Nancy Pelosi is wrong, but I do think she's wrong here. Listen, I don't think Joe Biden had a lot of great options. First of all, think of what life was like in November of 2022. He had just won a midterm for the most part. He's the only person who's ever beaten Donald Trump in an election. He was probably feeling much more healthy than he felt probably this year. And he was kind of a political powerhouse. He had passed a bunch of legislation and nobody thought he would be able to pass. Why pull yourself out of the game then? Point number two, let's say you had a competitive primary. Everybody ran. Kamala Harris gets in the race. She doesn't win the Democratic nomination. Hubert Humphrey, Walter Mondale, Al Gore, Joe Biden, every single white guy who was Democratic vice president got to be nominated president. And the first time the Democratic Party wouldn't do it would be for the Black and South Asian woman. Imagine that ad Donald Trump would have ran in African-American communities. And that would have really gotten to African-American women who would have been much more supportive of Harris. You might have seen an even greater drop-off in Black support. Yeah, there were no great options.
Now, the point that he landed with is one that I've asserted many times to Pelosi's assertion about there potentially being a primary. The optics for emerging with a candidate other than Kamala Harris would have been so awful for your most fervent and reliable voting bloc, being black people and specifically black women, then I don't know that any other candidate would have been tenable. However, while the background up to November 2022 is significant, and the points that he's making about the midterms in 2022 are real, and also coming off of having defeated Donald Trump just 2 years earlier. That being said, it's a whole long road between November of 2022 and the summer of 2024, especially when you're an octogenarian.
Look,
there were a great number of people who sounded the alarm and sounded the whistle that something wasn't right. The king has no clothes. The king can't find his shirt. The king is wandering around the White House lawn with no shoes on. All of these assertions have been made, all of these whispers. We've seen the man appear many times between November of 2022 and the summer of 2024. It's a whole long spectrum of when he could have potentially have made a transition. Now, I said in 2020, immediately after that election, that the Democrats had 3 years to find somebody to run in 2024. Because I didn't see any world in which Joe Biden would have been fit to run in 2024. That's not to say he can't be a good president in 2021 or 2022 or even 2023 or even 2024. But for you to be able to run means you have to show the vigor and convince the American people that you're going to be fit for another 4 years. And there's no reason to try and fight that uphill battle. None.
the word chutzpah comes to mind for a couple of different reasons. I mean, the first is that, if a hurricane hits the small town, sitting after the fact and arguing that we should have built the house out of brick or stone or wood doesn't really matter. For a lot of different reasons, this was going to be an election that incumbents were going to have a very, very hard time holding on to in this country. And to then say, well, if we'd had a primary and, a knife fight between some unknown group of Democrats, one would have emerged who would have been a stronger candidate than Kamala Harris and somehow run a better campaign than what we just saw in that 107-day sprint where she raised $1 billion and ran an almost flawless campaign. It just wasn't enough to
Many people would disagree with that, but
well, it was
going 0-for-7 in the swing states means it's not very flawless.
Well, other than
going 0-for-7 and losing the popular vote, there are a few things in the way of progress.
I don't think that speaks to the campaign. Like we
I think
were
it does. I
discussing
think
we
it
were
speaks
discussing
exactly
before.
what the American people
We were
got.
discussing before. In every developed nation, the incumbent party at the end of the pandemic has lost. They have lost bad. The Democrats here lost less badly than the ruling parties. Conservative, liberal, does not matter. Across the world, the convulsions caused by COVID, by inflation, by supply chain problems, people are angry, right? Often they are choosing nationalist candidates like Trump or like Meloni or like the National Front in France, which just barely lost, right? But often they're just picking someone who's going to get stuff done, right? I thought the best Trump slogan was the Trump will fix it slogan. Mm-hmm. People feel that society is broken. I don't think any Democrat could have possibly won this election.
One more time for those in the back. One more time.
The Democrats here lost less badly than the ruling parties. Conservative, liberal, does not matter. Across the world, the convulsions caused by COVID, by inflation, by supply chain problems, people are angry, right? Often they are choosing nationalist candidates like Trump or like Meloni or like the National Front in France, which just barely lost, right? But often they're just picking someone who's going to get stuff done, right? I thought the best Trump slogan was the Trump will fix it slogan.
That is such good background looking at what's going on. It's almost like the explanation that I am consistently giving here on this platform when people complain about inflation, as if somehow American exceptionalism was supposed to allow us to be immune from the pandemic or the ramifications therein. Everything happens in context. So our economy exists in the context of the world economy. Things that happen outside of this country affect things that are happening inside of this country. And when you compare relative recoveries from COVID, all of a sudden that casts a new light on exactly how our economy is doing and how healthy it looks. This is doing the exact same thing from a political lens, and we don't talk nearly as much about it as we should.
To your point, Errol, on the Pelosi of it all, I mean, this is Pelosi at two different junctures in her evolution on this question of whether President Biden should serve out a second term.
When Joe Biden dropped out, they said, oh, he's a statesman, he's beloved, he's doing this for the country, he's the greatest man in the world. And now that they've gotten their butts whooped, now they're blaming it on the guy who they were just saying several months ago
Didn't she say he
was the
should be on
greatest
Mount
guy in the
Rushmore
world.
president?
She did say that. But they're looking for someone and anyone to blame.
Wait a minute, is this coming from the same people supporting the vice president who once called the president Adolf? Is that same people? Huh? That's going to be looking for a Mitch McConnell that was quietly dancing on his grave in 2020 to try and support his transition? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
To your point, I think that's a valid point. This election was always going to be tough because of the economy. You look at all the net negatives for the Biden-Harris administration. I'm not certain there was this magical candidate out there who suddenly could have defeated Donald Trump. I just don't believe that.
I totally agree. And imagine a different postmortem from Nancy Pelosi where she says, you know what? We obviously totally disagree with 8,000 things that Donald Trump stands for, but we should have done a better job of hearing the pain of the American people. We should have taken it more seriously. We should have not stigmatized, the dumb Trump voters and all those MAGA people. We should have taken this more seriously, and we could do a better job moving forward because we, the Democrats, have solutions that might actually work. Instead, this finger pointing.
What the Democrats need to do is take a page from, believe it or not, from the GOP, who after two losses to Barack Obama went back and said, wait a minute, this isn't working.
Although, let's be clear, they threw out that autopsy.
Oh, Bernie want to weigh in?
Bottom line, if you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interests and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no.
Now, I disagree vehemently with what Bernie Sanders had to say about the working man in America. I thought that Kamala Harris spoke directly and specifically to the working man from a solution-oriented perspective. She was looking at things that could potentially help the working man, like strengthening their ability to collectively bargain.
When I am president, with your help, I will sign the PRO Act into law and make it easier for workers to join a union and negotiate for better pay and working conditions.
Or helping them buy a house.
While we work on the housing shortage, my administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home.
Or helping deal with the price of groceries.
And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
However, that wasn't as effective as the MAGA appeal to the working man that made them feel good. Not the stuff that would actually help them, just the kind of stuff that would make them feel empowered. And it's so ironic that the right wing criticized Kamala Harris and the Democrats of running an election on vibes. Well, you tell me what policy he was pushing that would have helped the working man.
Believe me, this is not what we need. My total priority, believe me, is the United States of America.
Because Kamala had a whole lot of them. I will agree with you in this sense, Bernie Sanders. Clearly there is a disconnect. But the disconnect isn't that there hasn't been a focus on the working man. The disconnect is in the messaging. It is an actual disconnect. So even though you might have the message, if you don't have the number, it ain't getting there.
Kamala Harris for the people.
Now, circling back to where we started, I absolutely believe that between Joe Biden and the Democratic establishment, as I asserted immediately after this election, therein lies 100% of the blame for what happened this election. They can divide it up amongst themselves. The fact that they found themselves unprepared with a 4-year head start to find the candidate that they could give more than 107 days in order to run a political campaign. But bear this in mind while you're deciding where to chop up that 100%. I happen to see this little ditty right here. Biden's polling said Trump would win at least 400 electoral votes before the president quit the race. This came from a speechwriter for Obama. Quote, the Biden campaign's own internal polling at the time, when they were telling us he was the strongest candidate, showed that Donald Trump was going to win 400 electoral votes. That came from Jon Favreau on the Pod Saves America podcast. So you mean to tell me that while he was out here telling us that he was the strongest candidate and he had confidence in his own abilities, his polling said that Donald Trump would win at least 400 electoral votes? And as opposed to consider the possibility that polling might be correct, and maybe even if it's not exactly correct, if it's even close to the ballpark, it don't gotta be 400. You only need 270. So you know how wrong your polling has to be for you to feel confident that you were the best candidate. So you held this entire thing up because you didn't trust your own polling that said that you would get crushed by Donald Trump, to the point where you had to have that debate, which so eroded confidence in those around you that you were then pushed out of the race, giving Kamala 107 days. Keep that in mind. When you're dividing up this 100%, keep that in mind. This man knew, and he still held, he still made them drag him out of the race by his hush puppies. I am not pleased. I am not pleased.